So last time we finished with this idea that Shem Havaya should rule over Shem Elokim. The name Havaya is greater than the name Elokim, meaning that there's an inyan, there's a point of life. It's, the purpose of humanity.
Yosef only says that Elohim will answer you. Yosef doesn't use Yud-Kei.
Okay. So that, I wanted to show that to you in the Yerizal, but we never got around to it. But what he means to say is that Elokim Yaneh Shlom Paro really, sorry, not that. Elokim Yaneh Shlom Paro, that's one thing. But the other thing that he says is Le'Elokim Pitronim, that Elokim has the solutions to your questions. So the Yerizal has to kvetch a little, and he says Elokim Pitronim. The meaning is there are solutions to the problem of Elokim.
What?
Okay. He says Elokim, since it's a lessening of Hashem's light, it's only nature. So we have to find solutions to it. But basically the whole understanding here is that what Paro is dreaming is part of nature. He dreams within nature. And something above nature has to come and interpret it. So, but in any, however you organize this in Yiddishkeit, there's something that's very basic, which is that nature needs to be interpreted. You can't take nature at face value. Okay? The whole point is that the name Havaya adds something, God's essential name adds something into the mix. And what it adds is only if you rule over nature. But if you don't rule over nature, and nature takes over, so then the feeling is one of Azav Hashem et haaretz, that God has left the earth. It's a very interesting thing that as we approach Geula, redemption, there's a whole movement in the world of return to nature. But I think that most people don't really think about what they're saying. Meaning they're willing to return to nature on their terms.
Return to nature is just an expression of wanting to come closer to Hashem. They see the world is false. They see that everything's a balagan. So they want to get back to some sort of makor. They have no idea where the makor is or what it is.
If that's what it means, then it's okay. But a lot of people think about it as returning to nature, not just as freeing themselves from different limitations of society, but they also see it as some kind of nature itself in its pristine state is more pure than what human beings can do. And it's not just that. They feel that there's something in nature that's more that's holier, I don't know what to call it exactly. But I think that in the end the view of Torah is that nature needs to be respected, but you can't run your life based on nature. To say it another way, the way I usually say it in terms of the individual, your body is natural. You have to respect that. So the more you act with your body based on nature, the better it is. But your mind cannot be natural. The mind has to be free. The mind has to go beyond nature. And nature, by definition, is something that's cyclical, necessary. It's impossible to break out of it. You can't really break out of it. So you have to control it in some way. Meaning you have to delegate it to a certain area of your life. But you can't lead your life based on nature. Because if it was based only on nature, you would never get beyond the natural. And obviously we have a task to get to what is beyond nature. That's exactly what Hashem means. If it was only for nature, so if you look at the universe and you use only nature at your devices, so you come to the conclusion, like we said, Azav Hashem et haaretz, there's no God. He's certainly not involved. So for that you have to go beyond. You have to go to the supernatural. Channukah in that sense is the marriage of the supernatural and the natural. Okay? On the one hand, you're using pure olive oil to light the candles. On the other hand, the candles themselves, fire itself, and especially the fact that it has to be pure in the sense of the ritual purity, not in the sense of just it came out of the olive. No, it has to be pure in a ritualistic sense. So those two things together, they're telling you that we're aiming for something higher. And the other thing that aims for it is the number 8, right? That 7 represents nature, and 8 is already beyond nature. And even the word 8 and shemen and oil in Hebrew are the same root. And if I would ask you how many days should you light oil, so in Hebrew you would say shmona, shmone, because it comes from the word shamen, comes from the word shemen, comes from oil itself. The idea being that oil itself represents that which is beyond nature. Out of all of nature, the part of nature that represents the connection between the natural and the supernatural is oil and fire itself, which burns and pushes upward. And in any case, so that's pretty much what we ended with. And then he says, when a person thinks about this, that really nature wants to submit itself to the divine. Nature wants to reveal within it miracles. It wants the miracles to be revealed through it. It doesn't want to remain dark in the sense of not showing God's light. It wants to reveal. So the person himself who's also natural, so he does the same thing with himself. He says, well, if nature is supposed to submit itself to the divine, I should start with myself. So my natural state should also be submitted to the divine. That's bittul. So whatever I have powers to do, I want to do the divine will. Meaning, in other words, that I'm willing to forsake until it's willing to remove from itself all the cravings of this world. Meaning it doesn't want to live just in order to partake of the pleasures of this world. And he wants to he wants to change and transform his heart entirely. To use all his emotions to cling to God. And as if there's nothing except for God in heaven. And the way that this was described in the Zohar, as we said in the introduction to the Zohar, when Rabbi Chia wanted to see Rab Shimon Bar Yochai in his chamber in the Garden of Eden,
don't come here unless.
They said, you can't enter here. And one who has not changed, transformed the bitterness into sweetness and the darkness into light cannot enter here, has no part here. You can't continue to hear Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai if you haven't done this. You have to transform the bitterness into sweetness. What is it talking about? So the bitterness of this world are the delights, the pleasures that a person takes from the klipa. Meaning from something that does not show divinity. Something that is neutral, all the more so something that is impure, and so on. If you take delight in that, if you enjoy that, that is the bitterness in life. That's really the bitterness. And really that's the image in the Tanya, right? The Tanya in chapter 35. He takes from the Zohar, from the Channukah and Mishpatim, in Balak, in the Zohar, and he takes there the mashal that's given, Shemen al roshcha lo yachsar. That oil should not be removed from your head. You should always have oil on your head. It's an image, obviously. What's an image for? So he explains in the Tanya. The oil represents you're using your body to do good deeds. And that's what creates oil. And the oil is what burns. It was meant to burn, so it's bitter. The oil is bitter. Like the oil that comes out of an olive is bitter. You don't eat it. It's very hard. It's not something you want to eat by itself, although some people take, a
cup of it.
Not a cup, but like a teaspoon of it every day. But the point of the oil is really to let it burn. And that's what it means to transform it. You're taking the bitterness and using it on the top of your head, what's on top of our head, the Shekhinah, the divine presence. So you're using it to illuminate. It's like you yourself are a candle, right? That's the image there in the Tanya in chapter 35. That you yourself are like a candle. The wick is the body, and the fuel that the body is using is the good deeds, the bitterness that you did, okay, the things that you did, and you transform that bitterness into sweetness by lighting it up, by using it to serve God. And don't think for a moment that things that are neutral, it's not forbidden in Torah, don't think for a moment, says the Alter Rebbe, that because it's not forbidden in the Torah, because of that, it's permissible. You should understand that things that are dark, meaning they don't reveal divine light, the person at the end of the act doesn't say to you something like, wow, you just sanctified God's name. Like when you give tzedakah, it's very seldom that somebody feels that you didn't do anything. And if you give tzedakah to somebody and it's meaningful, so people are moved. That's godliness. You see godliness in the person's act. When people come to a holy person, so they right away, they feel the presence of the Shekhinah there. They feel the presence of the divine presence there. But if a person's just playing with his ear lock, so here it's not exactly his ear lock. Misasel b'se'aro, that's he's grooming himself. There's no holiness there. There's nothing there. So don't think for a second something like that that's neutral is okay. It says no. Know that comes from the chambers of impurity. ולכן נענש יוסף בשבתו בבית האסורים 12 שנה, אשר היה מססן בשערו. And even in relation to our parsha, Yosef was punished for 12 years because at Yosef's level, to do something like that, to groom himself, warranted a punishment that severe. כי דאית בגמרא על פסוק ויהי יוסף יפה תואר בפי מראה, מיד ותישא אשת אדוניו וכו'. What happened, how did it come about, that he was always grooming himself? He didn't do it just once, wasn't just once, but this was his nature. It became his taiva. Mm-hmm. It became his craving. I was thinking this morning about how easy it is to develop a craving. It's any type of addiction that you have is a craving. Like the way that people are addicted to food. They have to have coffee or... On the face of it, it's like nothing. What do you want? It's neutral. It doesn't mean anything. But whether you realize it or not, you've become addicted to something neutral. And that something neutral, I'm not saying that everybody can be that holy, but you have to understand the meaning of what you're doing. Okay? So the question is, are you free? Are you really a free person? In the end, what does it mean to be above nature? It means to be free. That you're not
constrained.
You're not a victim of your natural inclination. That you can, in general, the human being is supposed to be free, okay? Even free from death. In the end, even as much as death is natural, okay, so fine, it's natural. I don't want to be constrained by nature. I want to go beyond nature because serving God means being free in the same way that God is free. And וצריך להפוך ליבו, לטעום ממש למיתקה, טעמו וראו כי טוב השם. And you have to in the same way that a person can habituate a sweet tooth, that he's always looking for something sugary. So you can habituate yourself to always look for the divine in everything that you're doing, in such a way that everything has that meaning. It has a meaning of me being free, of me being able to serve Hashem, and I'm not forced into anything. I don't feel like I'm required to do something. Okay? That's what it means. That's what it means to switch the bitterness into sweetness. You're always looking for something sweet, but the true sweetness is to see the divine in everything that you do. That's what the sacrifices were about. That was what the sacrifices taught us. When you took the fattest part, the best part, and you put it on the altar. In the same way, the best part of whatever you do in life should be dedicated to serving God. Same way, when a person prays today, and the prayer is instead of the sacrifices, you can bring yourself to do it in the best part of the day, when you wake up, the most precious hours are the hours after you wake up, and you dedicate that to Hashem, and that's like a sacrifice. The best part of your day is given to God. What does it mean to transform the darkness into light? שחושך הגשמי של עולם הזה, מעשה שמיים וארץ שנראים לי יש בדבר גשמי, יתהפך לי נהורה. להיות בו גילוי אור אינסוף ברוך הוא, להיות היש בטל אליו יתברך, ונגלה כבוד השם למטה כמו למעלה. That the darkness of this world, and darkness means that this world seems like there's no godliness in it. It seems like it's just matter, it's just substance, and there's no form of godliness in it. To transform it, and to reveal the infinite within the finite, and to show that the substance is nullified before the form, before God. It's not exactly form, but it's as good as I can do right now. והיינו שעל ידי בחינת האם ערעור למתקש וממטה למעלה, להפוך ליבו ותאוות עולם הזה, לדבקה בו יתברך בתשוקה וצמאון, יאיר אור השם מלמעלה למטה, במקום החושך של העולם הזה, שלא יהיה העולם מעלים אור השם בקדושתו. And then when a person does this from below, and he subjects all his powers, all his strength, everything, to serving God, so God shines upon him from above. And that's what's called, וזהו גם כן עניין נר מצווה ותורה אור. That the candle is the mitzvah, and Torah is like light. What's the idea? That the candle, as we said, that's me burning myself up from below to serve God. That's the awakening from below. That's called, the candle is a mitzvah. The mitzvahs, doing commandments, that itself is burning from below like a candle. And the result is that the Torah is revealed from above. So in that sense, Torah revealed to a person, as much as a person can learn in his day-to-day, is dependent on how he does his mitzvahs. The light of the Torah, meaning how a person understands it in his mind, how much it affects the way he sees the world, that depends on how he does the mitzvahs. And you know in Chabad how much the Alter Rebbe, all the Rebbeim, the main thing in the end is mitzvahs. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you believe. I don't care even what you believe. I told you this once, that the Rebbe wrote to people who told him, I believe like this and I don't believe like that. And people get really hung up on this. Why? Because of Christianity, apparently. Because they have these dogmas or stuff that you're supposed to believe. And people get really hung up on it. And the Rebbe said it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. In the end, the goal of life is to do mitzvot. Is to do. You think you're doing it because of this, because of that. It doesn't matter. In the end, it doesn't matter. Obviously, there are more correct opinions. That's correct. Stuff that's easier to uphold, stuff that's more difficult to prove. But that's not the point. The point in the end is how you live your life. What do you actually do in practice? So now we have to understand a little bit more about this idea of mitzvahs being a candle and Torah being the light. Okay. To understand this, we have to understand about letters. And we said here something very interesting last time. That in the Tanya, it doesn't fully explain this, and here it explains it more fully, because we saw that this is something that he wrote mamish at the end of his life. This is in 1810, this mimer, this essay. So in the Tanya, he just said that no person knows how to form the letters. It's not that we want to form the letters when we speak, and because of that we're able to speak. No person thinks about how to form the letters that he's saying. They just come out. And so it's not the way that you think about letters being some result of our thought. The letters are before our thought. They precede our thought. In fact, thought is made in some way out of letters, and not the other way around. The reason that it's hard to see is because a lot of people think that at the root, they think in pictures, not in letters. But the way that he disproves this is he says that really the letters are even before that. And here he's going to explain it a little bit more than he did in the Tanya. Kinei otiyot nechlakot b'mifta l'idei hei motzot hapeh. There are 5 origins to the letters in Hebrew. Aleph, Chet, Hei, Ayin, Me'agaron. So there's from the throat, the guttural letters. And then there's the letters that come out of the mouth, the Cheich. And then there's the tongue. And there are the teeth and the lip letters. In 5 different categories. והנה אין המוצאות כלי המבטא דומים לכינור שהוא כלי הניגון שבנגן המנגן עליו מוציא קול. שהקול הוא בא מתנועת הכינור שהוא מוציא את הקול. So these origins, we don't mean to say that it's like in a violin, a musical instrument, that you play on it and then it comes out, because nothing really comes out of the mouth. Nothing really even comes out of the no letters really come out of anywhere. It works in a different way. Why? It's not because we move them that the letters come out. Meaning, in other words, it's not that we move them and then the letters come out. Rather, it's the other way around. Because by themselves, the vowels attached to the letters come out. You don't think about it. You don't even know. You don't even have to know. You see this? Yeah. Most people don't know how to write the vowel signs. Certainly not correctly. But even a child, they don't even know if it's a hey or a lav. Certainly they don't know if it's a kamatz or a patach. They don't know these things. Most people don't know. So how do we talk correctly? What's the whole point? So the whole point is that we have in us already a picture. Picture is the wrong word, but we have a how would you say that?
Discontinued place.
You already have some kind of knowledge of what it needs to sound like, and you figure out how to do it. It just comes out. It's not like that you use your mouth and use your lips. You don't even know what you're doing. שמאליהן ומעצמן יוצאות תנועות האותיות בלי שום הכנה וכוונה מכוונת באדם להניע לשון לאותיות ד' ט' ל' נ' ת'. Those are the lips letters. So the person doesn't think I'm going to use my lips now to say a lamed. Doesn't know that he's even doing it unless you point it out to him, or if he's chas v'shalom, he's been in an accident and he has to have speech therapy or something like that. Then the speech therapist will teach him, this is what you're doing this is what you need to do in order to get the letters out. But naturally, this doesn't happen. And certainly nobody is taught to speak a language this way. Right? No child is taught this way. It's the other way around. That the letters are the ones moving the apparatus. In this case, the tongue, the otiyot, dalet, tet, lamed, nun, taf, vasfatayim, the otiyot, bumaf, bet, vav, mem, pe, they're the lip letters. And really, the letters, they represent the will. Here, nefesh, the psyche, he's talking about the will. והנפש היא המוציאה אותה מהאלם אל הגילוי מתחילה באותיות המחשבה ואחר כך באותיות הדיבור. And the will first forms the letter in the thought, and then it brings it out in speech. But that's the order. Will, thought, and speech. So we started talking about this last time. That those are the 3 levels that he's going to talk about here. So in our world, this means keter, crown, would be the will. The thought would be, in this case, he's talking about the 3 lower worlds. In this case, I was going to say, he's talking about the world of emanation, of Atzilus. And the speech is the 3 lower worlds, creation, formation, and action. And the reason we're saying it like this is because he said in the beginning that when God created, he spoke, and the Torah begins creation from the world of creation, Bereshit bara, creation. But when it came to giving man his soul, so the soul was taken from emanation. And the way that we know it was taken from emanation is because it wasn't spoken into man, like everything else.
It was blown.
It was blown into him. And the blowing, we said, we understand it to be something more essential as a metaphor for something that's more essential. And that's what it means when it says that man was a living psyche, What do we mean living? He was a nefesh before. He was alive before. But what does it mean? He's a living psyche, a living soul. V'tergem unklus. So unklus says there leruach memalala, that he now has the power of speech. So until now he had a nefesh. Nefesh means will, literally. That's what it means. So we say psyche, but really it means will. Shebchinat otiyot v'bchinat chaya. But the chidush was that he now became alive, chaya. And the chaya for a human being means his ability to express himself. So there are two levels of expression from this. There's a level that I'm expressing myself to myself, that's thought. And my ability to express myself to somebody else, that's speech already. But both of them are relative to the will, called chaya, called speech. Ki yesh ba'adam nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya. Because man has nefesh, right? It's 4 levels. Nefesh ubchinat otiyot machshava b'dibur. So now he's switching on us. He's playing a game with us, right? Because he switched to a different model. And suddenly he switched from nefesh being will, which is in the keter. He now is going to use the regular model of the soul, where it's nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, and yichida is like the keter. Okay? And chaya is lower. But in any case, what he's doing, he means the same thing. Nefesh ubchinat otiyot machshava v'dibur. Psyche, here we're going to have to say psyche, not will. Psyche is the ability to think and speak in letters, in words. V'ruach hu hevel halev shu kol kalul me'esh ruach u'mayim kanoda, v'neshama היא בחינת השגת השכל ונשמת שקה תבינם, וחיה היא בחינת חוכמה, דהיינו מקור החוכמה שלמעלה מן ההשגה. So now he switched it on us. So chaya here becomes wisdom, and wisdom is the source, here he says, of all the letters. Okay. But it's just another way of saying.
Writing is like speech.
Sorry, writing is like speech. It's just an action. ושם הוא שורש האותיות, אלא שכבאן בפה, ולא שבראן שם בפה. And really the source of the letters is in the chaya. Except that that's the source. Where they come out is either in the thinking, which is the neshama, would be the neshama, or in the speech, would be the nefesh. And so he used both models in a very confusing way. I'm sure there's a reason why he switched in the middle, but I couldn't come up with it. So I don't know why he switched in the middle, because it's just confusing. Ki beri'utam, meaning their creation, v'itavutam, and their formation, משורשם הוא למעלה בבחינת חיה, משם נשארו ונתחלקו לקבל אותיות, לדבר בהם איש ואיש כלשונו. And from the wisdom, from human wisdom, come down the languages. And in general, again, he states this idea that appears many times in the sages, that the language that Adam spoke was Hebrew in some sense, the holy tongue. The reason they say this is because they view the 22 letters as being archetypes, meaning you can have all kinds of call it composite letters created in other languages. And so, for instance, the ch sound, right? CH. So there's no CH in Hebrew. So how do you create it in Hebrew? How can you create something like that? So that's the modern way, which has no basis for anything, because it's just a symbol. But how do you really create it? So really created a tet shin. A tet and a shin together is ch. That's Lubavitch, you write at the end, is a tet shin at the end. That's the real CH. In the same way that you have to do it in English, right? There's no letter for it in English either. You have to take 2 letters and put them together. So why is it these 2 letters? I have no idea. Must be a good reason for it. But it's not a letter in and of itself. It's not an archetypal letter. It's a sound that the human vocal system can make. But these 22, they're the archetypes of all speech. Okay. And every person speaks in his tongue, in his language. And when we understand this, we can understand what it means that there's an angel, his name is Matat, who uses the letters that we say in order to weave crowns for Hashem. out of the letters that we speak when praying. What's this about? So he explains like this, because this is a very difficult thing for everybody to understand. Even it was so difficult that they wanted to take this out of the slichos, because in the slichos we say something that's unheard of. Why would we have angels in between us and Hashem taking our prayers up to Hashem? That's so not Jewish. So why are you putting somebody in the middle? Even if there is somebody in the middle, why would you say anything to them? Machnisei rachamim, shomei tfilah. It's like addressing the angels. What are you talking about? In the middle of praying to Hashem, you address angels? It's very not Jewish. It's not. There's something wrong with it. So it was so bad that they wanted to take. I think some people have. It was taken out of slichos because it was so contradictory to Jewish thinking. So, but what's hiding behind this idea? So he says like this: in the end, when a person speaks, these are physical sounds. You can record them. והמלאכים הם רוחניים, שהדיבור שלהם הוא כמו מחשבה שלנו. So he says, what's an angel? An angel is some kind of intermediary. I don't mean an intermediary between me and God. What I mean is an intermediary between two states. When I speak, it's completely physical. But the angel, for him, his speech is like my thought. And I have a problem. Why do I have a problem? Because I'm supposed to speak the prayer. I'm supposed to actually utter it. I'm supposed to do something physical. But I understand that Hashem is not physical. Hashem's not spiritual either. But he's at least both of them. He's at least physical and he's at least spiritual, but he's neither. You can't define him as either or. So I need the angel in a certain sense. What do I need the angel for? I need the angel to transform the physical speech back into the world of thought. Can I do that? Why not? Of course I can do that. How can I do that? That while I'm speaking, I have kavanah, I have intent.
Oh, okay.
If I'm able, while I'm saying the words of davening, while I'm praying, to also have intent in my mind, so I'm doing the part of the angel. The angel is needed for somebody who can't focus on what they're saying. That's why a person who has the Arizal's kavanos, for instance, or all kavanot that were written, really what they're doing is they're filling in the part that was missing by themselves. You're right, I don't need the angel. But what happens if I don't even understand what I'm saying? Let's say it this way. As much as I might know, we assume that the prayers that were put together by the Knesset Gdolah, by the great sages of the Second Temple period, so they knew more about what I was saying than I know. So when I speak, I would like that all the inner intentions that they put, all the hidden meaning that they put into these words should be added to the physical word being said. So I call upon angels. What do I mean by angels? I mean the hidden meanings. Whatever these hidden meanings are that I don't know, I call upon them to add themselves into my physical words. That's really what I'm doing. So, על ידי המלאך המקבל התפילה, מזדככת התפילה מגשמיות לרוחניות על ידי המלאך. So if I can do this myself, great, much better. But if I can't do it myself, so I call upon it, you could call it the residue of these great people who put the prayers together. The residue of their meaning, of their hidden meanings, is still here in the form of angels. It's like when they wrote this, they created the angels that know what the inner meaning is. So when I'm praying, I'm asking for it to be purified, my words to be purified, because I also might be thinking about something that's not even related to prayer. Okay, we talked about that.
Last week's football.
Right. Or this morning's or this afternoon's stock market. I don't know, whatever it is. So if my head is somewhere else, so at least their head is in the right place. So I'm calling upon this to be before Hashem as if I had all these hidden meanings in my mind. So they purified in that sense. They add the meaning to the words. והנה גבוה מעל גבוה עד עולם העליון שבו משכן מתת, והוא קושר כתרים שלמעלה מן הראש ומוחין. And then, once you have the head into it, so right now we only had the heart and the mouth. While I pray. Hopefully my heart is there, even if my brain isn't there. But at least my heart is there. I want to pray. My mouth is there. I'm praying. When I add this angelic side, which really means the hidden meanings into it, or just the meanings, even if simple meanings, I add that, so I've covered the brain. What's missing? There's still one thing that's missing: the crown on the top of the head. The crown on top of the head means that it's not just that I'm saying it, it's not just that I feel it, it's not just that I understand it, but I also want it. The crown is always the will. Okay? So Matat, this special angel, his duty in the world is to show will. So you know the famous story. The famous story is that every day when they wake up, what does Matat make the crown out of? So he makes it out of the tefillin. He makes it out of the words that were said. He makes it out of all these things. And the morning after Simchas Torah, he wakes up. And what does he find? Everything is littered with shoes, torn shoes. So he says, well, what is this? So actually, the other angels found this, and they don't know what to do with shoes. Shoes, look, with words we know what to do, but with shoes, what can we do with shoes? So Matat tells them, he's the one who understands this. He says to the other angels, he says to them, you don't understand. This is the result of their dancing all night long before with the Torah. It represents their will, which in a certain sense is more than saying anything. They didn't say anything. You're right, they didn't say much. There were only a few words spoken. But what they expressed on the eve of Simchas Torah was their will to connect to Torah, their will to connect to Hashem. And out of that I can make the best crowns. Because and then you've given me the material that I need. That's what Matat needs. He needs the will of the person. Hinat filah hi bakashat yehi ratzon. Because what are we saying in davening? We're saying, Hashem, we want you to have will. What do you mean we want you to have will? Here's my will. Hashem has all the will he needs. I don't need to give him will. But, I don't need to tell him, but he needs my will. What do you want? Do you want to change the world? Do you not want to? Where are you in all this? So you're saying the words very nice. You say, Ashrei Ashrei B'techa Odi Chasera. Odi Alulu Chasera. Do you really mean it? Do you really mean these words? Slach lanu Hashem Elokeinu. Do you really mean that I should forgive you? Where's your will? So Matat, that's what he adds into the prayer. Shitaveh b'chinat ratzon. שכמו שכבר נמשך רצון העליון בחוכמה, okay? So just as Hashem already instilled the wisdom in the world with some will. הנה החוכמה מחייבת על פי התורה, אין יסורים בלא עוון, שעוון גורם יסורים חס וחלילה. So according to the wisdom, if a person sinned, he needs to be punished. That's what wisdom says. That's the will that Hashem instilled into wisdom.
That's good.
And that's why Chokhmah always comes out first as Gvura. It's called the Chokhmah Stima. Mm-hmm. That's what we call the might, the Gvura of the Keter, of Arich Anpin. So in any case, Hashem put into the wisdom, meaning into the natural scheme of things. He put a law that said that if a person sins, he has to be punished. So what do we say? So we say, אבל על ידי התפילה יהי רצון, נמשך רצון העליון שלמעלה מבחינת חוכמה, V'sham rachamim pshutim v'rabu psha'echa. So, by addressing Hashem through prayer, and we're saying Yehi Ratzon, may there be will. So if I show my will, I want you, Hashem, to change this. Hashem addresses wisdom again and brings down a new understanding. And this new understanding, this new wisdom doesn't require the punishment, because it's all mercy, it's all compassion. וזהו שאמרו רז"ל, כשישראל אומרים יהי שמו הגדול מבורך, יהי שמי רבה, כן? הקדוש ברוך הוא מנענע בראשו. So he's nodding.
When why isn't it good enough that you're there in shul? Why isn't that will? If you didn't want to be there, you'd be somewhere else.
כן.
So the fact that you're there shows that
there's some will, right? There's some will. But you need Matata to make it really... Again, the will that a human being has is relatively limited for that moment. Meaning, most people, when they pray, even when they have something very that's very burning for them, they need it a lot. Most people find it difficult to break out of nature and out of this natural view of the world that I don't deserve it. They find it difficult to break out of that picture. And the more frum you are, the more difficult it is to break out of it. Because you assume somehow that you already understand how Hashem works, and God is always just, and therefore justice must be done, and justice means that you have to be punished, and so on and so forth. And the people punish themselves. And so they say Yehi Ratzon, but they don't really know whether they can actually break out of this natural order of things that they're in, where they have to be punished, or they have to be this or that. They can't really address that higher place. So you need the matat to bring you to the crown. And even if you had will, it brought you into shul, it made you pray. Usually, by the way, the prayer that acts the strongest in a person's life, the very strongest prayer that he ever has, is when he's distant and he comes close again. So if somebody who's never been in shul walks in and decides to pray, that type, if you can get him at that moment, tell him, listen, ask for me also. Because that switch is so powerful, from a place of not believing that my words can have an impact to the place of believing that they can have an impact. It's strongest the first time you do it.
It's something a little bit like the Rambam says that real prayer is when things are going wrong, you ask Hashem to help you. Because that proves that you now acknowledge that Hashem is running the world, because He's the only one who can help you.
That's why Mincha is the most powerful of all the prayers, because Mincha is in the middle of the day. You're stuck in the natural world, business, whatever it is, and suddenly you say, but now I have to address Hashem. What's it going to help you in the middle of of your work? No, this is beyond. Again, that's le'ahapcha. That's what it means to awaken from below to bring something down from above. It's what he's talking about here. Ner mitzvah v'torah o. That the doing a mitzvah, which is all an expression of will, brings down Torah. That this is what the sages meant when they said that when the Jews say Yehi Shmo HaGadol Mevorach, we say Yehi Shmei Rabbah. When we answer in Kaddish, Hashem nods. What does it mean that He nods? Obviously, He doesn't have a head; He doesn't nod. Rather, this is an image for it. Says Perush menaneu mamshich berosho ratzon ha'elyon baruch hu ki oto mevakshim Yehi Shmo HaGadol Mevorach sheyehe baruch v'nimshach Shmo HaGadol shelemar b'chinat hishtashut shegadol u'molal mod. So what we're really asking for is for Hashem to bring down will, and that's what He means that He nods. It's like He brings the will down. So the way we do this is we first awaken from below by raising the letters of our prayer, Leshorushanum Koran, to their root, Keter Elyon. This is the first time you said this in the entire Maimer. You noticed. First time you said Keter. This is the first, if I'm not mistaken, the first time. So he says it. He says, I'm talking about the crown, and I've brought everything up to the crown, Al Yedei Matat, and that's what it means. No, he said kosher ktarim. He said, but he didn't mention it as a sphera. He just said it as an image that Matat weaves crowns for God. Really what it means is that Matat helps me bring new will into the world by bringing my will up. Because really, why? Because why does this whole thing work? Could I throw pebbles and say, "Look, angels, I want you to add some intent to my throwing the pebbles, and I want you, Matata."
Of Mercury.
Exactly. Of what's it called? Why Mercury? What's it called? No, the guy that you throw rocks at. What was his name? There was an idolatrous practice.
I can't remember.
What was his name? It's not the Morech. No? I forgot his name. He's really crazy thing. Yeah, I forgot the name. Anyway, why can't you do that with pebbles? Because pebbles, their origin is down here. It doesn't help. But what did we say about letters? We said that the letters themselves, to begin with, they came from the crown, even more than Atzilus, from Ak, from Adam Kadmon, even higher. Because in Atzilus, they're just thoughts. And in Bria Yetzirah Asiyah, they become physical. They become mamish, something spoken, speech. But their real origin, the reason this all works is because we brought down something, or Hashem brought down by giving us the breath of life, which he said is the ability to speak. But that came from the crown itself. Meaning this all hinges on the identity that we have, that the human being's ability to speak is not from this world. It's clearly not from this world.
Yeah, because none of the other animals are doing that.
Right, and it doesn't matter how complex their vocal system is. Even a parrot, which has a vocal system that could theoretically speak, is not able to speak. And it doesn't matter in the end whether you're able to speak physically or not. In the end, the ability as word to speak physically is a sign of your ability to understand language. But not just language as words, but language as letters. It's really important, this difference, because apes can understand language as words at some level. They can get it at some level. They can learn 200, 300, 400 words, I don't know how many, in sign language. They don't have to speak. But they can't understand the concept of language the way we understand language. If there's no writing, if there's no letters in the sense of physical letters, then it's not language yet. It's expression, but it's not language. That's what we said, that the letters are moving the vocal system. It's not the opposite. Mm-hmm. This is the opposite explanation of the way that, I don't know, I guess anthropologists would see it. Okay, they would say the language formed naturally. That's fine. Could be that the language is also formed naturally. Maybe in 200 years, apes will start speaking. But until they can write, until they can break the language down, which really is not breaking it down, which is really seeing its elements and expressing those elements. Because there's a whole question in general in language. How do you know that this is how you say this letter? Where do you know this from?
Because it's the way my father said it.
Somebody had to start it at some point.
Yeah, okay. Who's wrong?
Somebody. So that's the whole difference between when you say that Moshe Rabbeinu brought down the Torah, the written Torah, as opposed to when you say oral tradition. Every other language you say, there was an oral tradition, and slowly but surely they built a sign for each letter. But it's very interesting, by the way, what does that say about Chinese? Where they don't have at least they didn't have until now, but they didn't have a breakdown of the words that they speak into separate letters.
They're pictures.
Again, pictographs, hieroglyphics. What does that say about that?
They're primitive.
So, it says something, I don't know exactly. What does it say about Japanese? Japanese didn't have katana until, I don't know, 150 years ago.
They didn't have what?
Katana. They do have a system for writing letters. But it wasn't used so much. And it was developed really 150 years ago. Out of all their connection with the West. So suddenly they realized that they were doing something too difficult with all these pictures. So it became an art form. It remained as an art form, but really they've been writing with letters for a long time already. But in China, this is new. And one of my children told me today that the Chinese are now moving to English letters. I would be amazed if that happens. But they realize that they have a problem. I told you this once, that somebody who was an expert in China. He told me that one of the things that almost nobody's willing to do there is public speaking, in the sense of reading from a teleprompter or reading a text. They're afraid to do it. A text especially, it won't read in public. Why? Because you'll be ridiculed. Because it's so easy to make a mistake. It's all inflection. You don't know what it really says. You can't be sure what it says. And so other people could be following along and they'll laugh at you. You don't understand that it's like a trick. It's like you're supposed to read this before that, and it means something else. It changes this, changes that. It's a whole weird thing. They can't read what they write.
I can't write the Hebrew that I write. Moshe, I'm going to finish this paragraph and
Okay.
I'm going home to bed. Excuse me.
As we said, the root of the letters is in the supernal crown. It's above wisdom and understanding and the mind. But the first revelation of the letters is in wisdom. Because thought cannot work without letters. But the letters themselves, the written letters, they are not related to thought. The mind cannot fully understand what the letters represent. All they are, in the context of our mind, is that there's some kind of garment that the mind wears in order to express itself. And then this garment comes further down, and we can speak.
Okay. Is that the show? Finish it tomorrow?
Hope so.